We're going to bring to order the January 8th Select Board meeting. Open session public meetings are subject to being videotaped. Your image and voice may be recorded. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:04. We had quite a full agenda this evening, but with some important decisions to make on several topics. So I'm asking for cooperation from all of you. Please wait for me to call on you before speaking. Be respectful of others when they are speaking, no interruptions. Be a good listener, and keep comments constructive and on point. And thank you for coming. All right. So we have approval of the minutes for December 18th, the open session minutes. Do I hear a motion?
I would move approval of the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. And hearing nothing else, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And we have general public comment next for things that I guess aren't on the agenda.
You guys are doing a good job.
I agonized over this all day. Thank you.
I understand how hard it is to be on the other side.
Yes. All right. Well, hearing nothing, we're going to move on to our public hearing for transfer of a liquor license. But we have been asked to continue this public hearing to January 22nd at 7:15, 7:30.
Second, hold on a second, let me just check, sorry. That was a last minute request from National Grid because of the storm.
No, this is the liquor license.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Continued to 122, and let me just get the time.
And this is because some paperwork's not quite yet done.
Right.
Correct.
Or not on their part, but the state responding back.
We will do that at 7 o'clock.
Okay, good. So the motion would be January 22nd at 7.
I move to continue the hearing to January 22nd at 7 o'clock.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And I texted Kristen today and I said to her, do you think maybe our highway superintendent would like this evening off? And so she checked with him and he said, thank you. So we're giving him a little leeway tonight.
Did a great job.
Right. So our next appointment, we're a little ahead of schedule. 7:15, the Odyssey, the OPEB actuarial presentation.
If you would like, since we're a little bit ahead, while we're killing 7 minutes, I could do my TA report if you'd like.
Yeah, I think he can start setting up.
Oh, yeah, you can start setting up, absolutely.
And pass things out. Because I think that allows us to jump into it quickly.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Yes.
I will try to be brief and within the spirit. So we are still moving on FY25 budget. Everything is going well. FinCom has met preliminarily with the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District, along with the Treasurer Collector and the library. And Capital Planning has met with representatives from Community Preservation Act Committee, Highway, Police, Fire, and EMS. I'm continuing to meet with departments, boards, and committees as I build the budget. And as a reminder, FinCom meetings are every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. through at least March. Residents are more than welcome to attend and provide input and ask questions. We will be discussing the rail trail in just a bit, but I did want to add that I confirmed the $100,000 state earmark that was secured by Representative Kilcoyne can be used as a match for the DCR grant that the Conservation Commission is working on, and it is not site specific. Conservation has confirmed that only the matching funds are required to be committed to the project up front, not the full amount being requested. Fall special town meeting. After speaking with the planning board and the town clerk, recommending we set a date for a potential fall town meeting that could be canceled if we do not end up needing to hold one, given the fact there may be some bylaws, Community Preservation Act projects, and planning board articles, among other items that are not ready for May, but could potentially be ready for the fall. So because this is a big fall with primary elections, the town clerk was asked what would work best, and she has advised that she would prefer a December 9th meeting if possible. That would give us enough time, hopefully, to certify free cash. And typically, the state has notified communities about their CPA matching funds by that date, so it would work pretty well. If that's something that the board is interested in, I can put it on a future agenda for further discussion. Electronic voting devices. I'd like to put this on the next agenda to discuss the possibility of using some ARPA funding to purchase the electronic voting device. We are looking at hopefully only purchasing one, and it would alleviate the 22 to 24 hours it takes volunteers to collect and tabulate votes by hand during an election. In order to use them for the fall primaries, we would have to order them prior to May town meeting, which is why we're asking, I'm asking if we can use the ARPA funding. And we have received 2 quotes. They weren't quite apples to apples, so I've been asking them to be revised a little bit so I can understand the upfront cost as well as the ongoing annual maintenance costs.
May
Sure.
I? For clarification, because I read your comments twice, and the electronic is for voting in elections, not at town meeting.
Correct.
Because every time I see electronic voting devices, I think of the things we have in our hands at town meeting.
Ballots,
And not
yes.
ballot counting devices for general elections.
Yep, no, my apologies, that could have been more clear.
That's no problem.
I was confused too, but I think that was our fault.
That was
No,
a header
I-
thing, because the description in your report was quite clear what this was about. so.
I think I get voting devices in my
Yeah,
head.
yeah.
That's part of my thing too. I am also happy to note that we received an $8,475 grant from our insurance company Maya to evaluate the HVAC controls and equipment here at the municipal offices. If you've ever sat in this building, it's often freezing in July or the winter or way too hot, and different in certain areas of the building. So TC Control Group will assess, perform maintenance and quality control on the existing controls, evaluate which components are currently being controlled and to what capacity, perform maintenance, and provide a list of any issues needing to be immediately addressed as well as long-term concerns. TGI Fridays abruptly closed half of their restaurants in Massachusetts, including their Solomon Pond location and 36 restaurants nationwide. We received a letter on Friday that the restaurant was closing their doors on January 2nd, which was Tuesday, before the letter arrived. The Berlin Memorial School lease will go before the school committee this week for a vote on sending it back to the town with recommended revisions. I met with consultants from National Grid's Fleet Advisory Services program to continue to work on basically it's called a inventory assessment control that looks at opportunities for electric vehicles and how we can convert some of our existing vehicles as they reach end of life. Also spoke with Tohoto regarding potential community service opportunities for students. And we will be meeting with the facilities study group this week to discuss the draft building assessment reports that have come in and provide feedback to the consultant. I've also sent them all, now that we have them, to the Energy Committee. They are helping to pay for a portion of the report, which is looking at energy, has an energy audit component to it as well. The next steps would be to have a compiled draft report presented to the board and sent to town boards and committees for their review and comment. We will be moving forward on a lease for the flooring contractor here at the town offices. I've been meeting with Historical Chair June Miller to talk about drainage issues at 1870 and Bullard. And I'm also working on a lease for the food pantry and a field maintenance contract for the rec committee. And just a couple other quick items that weren't in the report but are relevant. We will be talking about Coffee Talk. It will be a hybrid meeting. Brittany has confirmed she will be here in person. Dee and I will actually both be in Boston. I will be logging in remotely that evening. It is the MMA annual conference. And I know we did this last year this way, and I said that I would remember this year and not do it on the weekend that MMA was, but unfortunately, it always works out that way with the holiday. But Brittany will be here in person to set it up from this end and monitor everything here. So we should be all set there. Also, the school has asked if we could notify folks about a school resource officer forum that they will be having for the public on Monday, January 22nd from 5 to 7 p.m. to discuss hiring a school resource officer for Tohoto and Boylston Elementary School. They had asked if we would advertise it on our website, but I didn't think that was entirely appropriate because it wasn't completely pertaining to the town. We do have a school resource officer in de facto, if you will, which is Officer Goody, who goes out into the communities. And I don't know how the board feels about this. We haven't had a conversation, so I don't know if advertising it is putting kind of a stamp of approval on it. So I don't know if the board has any thoughts on that, if they'd like us to advertise that forum on our website or not.
Anybody have any comments right now, or?
I mean, I think it's a school board that wants to have this. I think if the school board is doing a public forum, I have no problem with us advertising it.
Okay.
Well, we just did advertise it, sort of.
Yeah,
Kinda
we
did.
sort
Yeah,
of did, yes.
true.
But even on the website, I don't think just because we advertise a meeting that a body of the town is having means the select board has voted one way or another on whatever they're discussing.
Fair enough. It has been a contentious topic,
Yep.
so I just wanted to put that out there. And it will be coming up as part of the FY25 budget
Yep.
discussion, but I will certainly make sure
Yep.
to share that information.
I think because it's a contentious topic, I want to advertise it so people who have opinions on the matter can go and it can get some vettings prior to potentially something coming in front of like town meeting. And
Sure.
I don't want that to be the first time someone's talking about something like that.
Absolutely. And then the last question or comment that I
Oh,
had
have
for
a
the
list,
board.
But I'll ask just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I didn't know if you had anything to add after Scott.
No, the only thing that I have on that, since that meeting runs until 7, I would like to go, but that butts right up against our meeting. Can we delay our meeting for half an hour to give time from Boylston back to Berlin?
And that is
The
on-
school,
Mm-hmm, it's on January 22nd. It goes from, like, what, 5 to 7 or something like that, so
At
it's
Tohoto, yep.
right at our meeting,
Okay.
so.
well, I think we could start any time after 7.
Right, but I think we could advertise it as starting at 7:30 so that we
Yeah.
don't have people waiting here for us to
Right,
get
that's what I'm
quorum or-
asking,
yeah.
if we can delay our meeting to give
I'm-
us time to get back from
I'm fine.
Tohoto.
I'm unlikely to go to that meeting, but I'm totally fine with delaying our meeting till 7:30.
Okay.
What date is
Um,
that?
22nd.
We would have to change the hearing we just set for 7 o'clock that
Yes.
night.
Yes, we would.
Yes.
And the Economic Development Committee, who's coming at 7.
I would, again, I'd reach out to those people
Okay.
and do it. If my motion has to be adjusted, that the hearing for the liquor transfer is at 7:30 instead of 7, I am.
And this is.
I'll just
Oh,
show
fine
up
with
late. As long as there's 2, I'll just show up late, but I want to attend the meeting, so.
Yeah.
Well, all we would really need to do is just make a revised motion on the liquor license hearing if you'd like to start the meeting at 7:30. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Whatever you prefer.
I would move that we move the liquor license hearing to 7:30 so that we can start our meeting at 7:30.
Okay.
I'll second.
And the EDC is not a notice public hearing, so we can
Right.
just let them know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
you.
passes.
And then the last thing is, as we get into budget season, Scott and I talked a little bit about this, and I just wanted to bring it up with the board, kind of a way to talk about, with the police, fire, public safety folks, and highway, about the impacts of reductions on their budgets would potentially have on services to the town. And I don't want to present it as if it were a layoff plan or we're talking about layoffs, because we're certainly not. But I think that Scott's point, and I don't want to speak for you,
Yep.
but that there's understanding of what the impacts would be if we were to take away from those departments, and that there's an understanding of whether there's overspending, underspending. And I kind of flipped it on its head and said, well, what about what is not being done or could be done better if there was more funding? One way or the other, I think it's a matter you could discuss. discuss if you want to have that in the department head monthly reports. My only concern is if we approach it as a reduction, that looks like you're potentially preparing for layoffs, and I don't want to have an employee morale issue because I don't think we're headed in that direction. So I just wanted to have that open
And
conversation with
the
you.
other thing is that I do think that we need to do a better job of, when we suggest something, we need to take a vote on it. Because otherwise, it's like one member telling Kristen what to do, and the rest of us are in the dark.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think,
I think we
mean, to
need
be
to
clear,
do a
my
better
email with
job.
Kristen is that I had some thoughts and I wanted to understand the best way to approach it. I don't think I was asking you to, I don't think my email was asking you to do anything, except that I have some thoughts of how to have the conversation about both what would increased and lower staffing look like. You had a great idea, because I am not considering laying off, at least my one vote laying off or reducing the police. But I, you know, we here in town, I don't go to a place where people don't complain about how taxes are. And schools, police, fire, and highway are what, almost 90% of our budget.
75?
Yeah, and so if you're going to make any significant changes, it has to impact those. And I don't think anyone in town wants to reduce any of those services either. But I actually have some suggested thoughts of how to ask that question in ways that are not suggesting that we are thinking of reducing the staffing in any of those departments.
Perfect.
And I was going to bring that up in some just department presentations.
Excellent. Okay. And, you know, if we can be helpful, I think to Chris's point, sometimes I assume if one board member asks for something in a meeting and no one else says anything, that I should do it because I want to be helpful. But, you know, I may just say sometimes, can we take a vote on something? That way I know if I should be spending my time on that, because there are other things that time won't get spent on. So just want to make sure that we're there. And that's all I had for you.
Okay.
I, of course, have a number of questions, but given the time, I will wait. The only one that I will ask, since there are some members from here from Conservation, and the topic came up at their last meeting, do we have any updates on the cell tower?
We do. My one question I neglected to ask Carolyn was if that was discussed in open session or not.
It was.
Okay. So Carolyn and I had a conversation. She took it back to the board about parameters of what it would look like for a cell tower, possibly over on Rattlesnake Hill. And if possible, percentages of the lease proceeds were to be split between Conservation and the board, what that would look like. And based upon our conversations, the select board were interested in doing somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of the lease proceeds, and Conservation would agree to 1/2.
Have you heard anything else in regards to, and I wasn't looking for the percentage, but are they moving forward? Do we have any additional information from Igor? Is he coming back at any point?
They're waiting
Igor,
to
Igor?
hear from us. The next step would be to let them know if we're willing to put it on a warrant. So we need to reach some type of agreement as to whether or not the select board wants to put it on the May town meeting warrant. So I was planning on having that conversation once we get a draft warrant going.
And do we have any idea of the amount of the rent? I know it's open, but, you know, you go from 30,000, 35,000, 75,000, anywhere in between, so...
I've gotten nothing, and I can certainly raise the question. I don't know if they'll give it to us. We do need to put it out as an RFP, as we discussed. I don't know how many other people would be potentially interested in it, but if there are other carriers that were interested, because it does have to be an open process, that could impact the price as well. But I can definitely ask that question.
Okay, and then I'll hold all my other questions till later.
Okay.
I went 7 minutes over, so sorry, I tried. All right.
Would you like to introduce our speaker?
I most certainly will. So I would like to open our discussion this evening on OPEB, which is Other Post-Employment Benefits. It is a discussion about retiree health and dental insurance, and the Insurance Advisory Committee has a number of members who are here this evening with us. And we're happy to have Parker Elmore from Odyssey Advisors here with us this evening, who has put an actuarial study together for us. We actually were initially running the study at what our current split is for health insurance, which is a 75-25 split. The IAC did have some discussions around what would it look like at a 50% split on just the retiree portion of it. So I had asked Parker to prepare that as well. It does reduce our liability by a little more than $1 million. So I figured that would be the presentation that Parker could do this evening. I do actually have it to bring up on my computer here, if you'd like. If you want to give me just a moment. It's going on the TV. Oh, Peg, I was just going to ask if you could turn it on. Sorry, Scott.
This way.
Can you grab the button? I think it's closer on your side. Oh, no, it's not. It's right here. It's on. It's on.
Okay, perfect. Oops, sorry.
I said no, I pulled it so you had more. No,
Oh,
it's fine.
thank you. I thought it was in your way.
No.
Huh?
Well, maybe it's on.
It doesn't look like it's getting input because it's still
There's a red button, so there's power.
Maybe it's supposed to be
Power,
green.
but maybe we need to.
Maybe you need to reboot. Everything's plugged in.
That's a power button though that
Yeah,
also needs to be.
because the red button could be just that it's plugged in.
Yeah. Oh, there's a oh, there we go. Yep, that turns blue. That's right.
Blue button.
Gotta have the
Blue means
button.
go, I guess.
Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah, got the blue light and everything.
Look at that.
Magic.
And is that a good position for everybody?
Can you see it in the back?
I'm gonna make it full screen if you give me 1 second.
Yeah,
Get a little
what?
bit bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will turn it over at this point to Parker.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you for having me out. Just before we get started, I'll just kind of give you the quick 50,000-foot overview of what is OPEB, because obviously we work in it every day, so we assume everybody knows this stuff. So it's basically other post-employment benefits of what OPEB stands for. Most municipalities in the state offer other post-employment benefits. What that means is generally it's retiree medical, dental, and life insurance, which medical is the one that really matters. That's 95% of the liability. So the idea is that people work for you guys for a period of time, they get to be 55, 60 years old, they retire, and they would get medical benefits for the rest of their life. When they would hit age 65, Medicare would pick up a large portion of the bill at that point, but nonetheless you would provide a supplement plan to integrate with Medicare from there on out. So once again, it's a way to continue benefits post-employment, which is why they're called other post-employment benefits, but also the reason why most people have these benefits and why you're considering them is your issue is one of competitiveness. Retain, reward, and retain and recruit people. And the issue you run into is, and I've dealt with a couple other towns in this situation, is do you wish to be a AAA, training ground for other towns where people come here, they work 4, 5, 6 years, and they go, okay, I start thinking about my retirement. I got to go somewhere else where I can get these benefits of retirement. So there is a cost to them, but there's also a soft dollar cost of not doing anything, in the sense that you're going to be training a lot more people because you're not retaining people. Again, doesn't matter to me. You guys got to do what makes sense for you, but I just want to kind of lay out what these benefits are. So let's go to the next slide and give you the quick, 50,000 foot overview about who we are and why we're here. So our firm was founded in '98. We get about 5+ municipal clients we do these kind of services for. I was in Connecticut, Nevada, 37 states with clients, Europe, South America, Australia. In other words, I spent a lot of time on planes. But thankfully, I'm on Delta. There's no 737 MAX, no big holes in the side of my plane. I'm good. But if you got, American, Alaska or United, we'll live here. So on the next slide, I'm gonna give you, what's a plan like this cost? It's all well and good to say, hey, let's offer benefits. Well, the reason why this has become such a big deal in the last 15 years or so is that people put these benefits in back in the 50s and the 60s with no idea about what things were going to cost. Because, medical costs like $10 a week, who cares? Not a big deal, just offer these benefits. Well, things changed. Medical benefits got a little bit more expensive over the last 40, 50 years, and have continued to get more expensive. And so for your existing population under the 50-50 cost sharing that Kristen noted, it creates about a $3 million liability that would go on your balance sheet. So in your financial statement, you have probably note 12 as your pension plan. This would become then note 13, which would be OPEB benefits. So it is a big number, absolutely. There's no two ways about that. For most towns, it's either the largest or second largest liability on the balance sheet. So, let's be perfectly honest, it is a big number. But as I said, there's also you don't have to pay it all at once. And also there's the soft dollar cost of, if you don't offer these benefits, can you retain your key people? Or do they get to be 40 years old and go, I gotta start thinking about going somewhere else where I can get these benefits? And almost all of your neighbors have these benefits. So that's the kind of thing you have to keep in mind. On the next slide, income statement things in the municipal context don't mean as much, so I'm not gonna waste your time on a lot of this slide. But the service cost really says, those are the value of benefits being earned during the year by your active population, your people who are currently working here. So it's about $119,000, which is really about $4,100 a person. So if you think about it, if Johnny or Mary make $50,000 a year, they're earning $4,100 per year in medical benefits payable in retirement. Really deferred compensation, if you want to think about it that way. The financial statement expense, interesting, but we're not doing earnings per share here, so that's not really a big deal. Employer share of cost. This would be for the retirees only. So this is not what you're paying for all of your medical benefits for all of your people. This would just be for retirees only. Be about $44,000 a year. So it's not free, as I mentioned, it's gonna cost money, absolutely. But your guys' share of the cost is about 44 grand a year. And then net OPEB expense, which again is just really the financial statement expense less that number of the 196. The big thing here is also, how do you calculate all these magical numbers? Actuaries are going to be complicated, create all these numbers. So in the next slide, we'll kind of show you some of these things. So we have all these magical assumptions that actuaries like to use. Interest rate, the discount rate. If you think about it, the value of $1 a year from now is worth less than $1 today. By how much? As you guys have seen, the Federal Reserve has been increasing interest rates over the last 18 months or so. Right now, the municipal bond index rate that we use is 4.13%. That is the rate that will be used to discount liabilities back. So we're taking benefits payable 100 years from now and bringing them back to today, figure out what's that worth. And so the higher interest rate equals a lower liability and vice versa. Interest rates of 4% and change are higher than where they were 2 years ago, but your municipal bond rates, I think most of America has been spoiled in the last 40 years. We've seen interest rates pretty much in a straight line down for 40 years. And now in the last 2 years, interest rates have come back up and everyone's going, oh my God, these rates are high. But if you're old enough to remember, these rates are what interest rates were for a long time. It's just that people have gotten so spoiled with practically free money that, this is what interest rates are. So we factor in the interest rates. Then we got to factor in what's the probability that somebody stays employed each year. So you hire them at 25, they still here at 26, 27, 28. Okay, they make it all the way to retirement age. What's the probability they retire at 55, 56, 57? Okay, they elect to retire. What's the probability they elect to take coverage? What's the probability they elect to cover a spouse? And then what are healthcare costs going to go up every year? We have a fairly complicated model that does all this, deal with GDP and resistance points and medical share of GDP and all these magical things. You could also say it goes up by about 4.5% a year, and you come to pretty close to the same numbers. We have a whole lot of inputs, and you'll end up with basically the same number. So on the next slide, we just kind of talk to you guys about what your guys' plans cost. Your plans, I would say, are generous plans, which is great. I would say you guys are 15 to 20% above what we see for people in your area, which is fine. I mean, I have no dog in the fight. You guys can offer whatever benefits you want. That is one of the reasons why your plans are a little bit more expensive than they would be in some of your neighboring towns. That's fine. You guys with Maya, you guys pick the plans you want. That's certainly up to you folks. But again, your $430 Medicare supplement plan, talked to Kristen about this the other day. That is a place where you can find material savings by going to a different one that would probably carve another 20% off the cost of this plan, if indeed that's the pathway you want to go down. There are, again, let's be clear. Blue Cross isn't just decide, hey, let's just cut fees by 20%. No, it's a lesser package, let's be honest. There's a reason why it's 20% less. And that's the kind of thing you have to keep in mind. So, but again, I will tell you the plan you guys are considering offering for the Medicare supplement plan is where most of the municipalities were in the state 5 to 7 years ago. Most of them have adjusted to a lower plan. You're kind of going where they were a while back. The all-important, where do I compare in terms of my funding? Well, you guys obviously are starting, so you wouldn't have any funding yet. But in reality, a lot of people have no funding or very little funding. I mean, if you look at it, 72% of people are under 10% funded. You know, 29% are, you know, less than 1% funded. So even, you know, to get to the top 20%, you only got to be 20% funded
And, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
To be clear, this is of the liability.
of the liability.
Not of the annual costs?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, to back up for a second, under OPEB, there is no state mandate to fund beyond the annual cash pay-as-you-go cost. That is the only mandate to fund. Pension does have a mandate. You get a bill every year from the pension system, say, here's your appropriation, pay the bill. OPEB does not have that mandate. You know, people say, will that happen? I have my doubts because in a Prop 2.5 world, I don't see where they're going to come up with the ability to just ask, well, hey, just pony up a couple $100,000 a year. I don't see that happening for most towns. Again, legislature can do whatever they want, but in a Prop 2.5 world, I don't think in the near term OPEB funding requirements are going to happen. On the next slide, we just have a comparison to some peers. I mean, you guys decide who your peers are. I don't. We just look for towns of similar size or geography. You know, your guys' service cost, which is like the fourth column over, per eligible employee is about $4,100. A little higher than some, a little lower than others. You're basically about 7% above the statewide average, which again would make sense because your plans are slightly more beneficial than the statewide average. So no real surprise on that. You guys are not funding. Some like Lancaster are extremely well funded. Princeton and Holden are very well funded. They are the oddities. Most people are not that well funded. And your per covered retiree costs would also be very high because again, you have richer benefits than most towns do. Not a real shock. On the next slide, that service cost benefits being earned during the year about $4,100. It varies by department. Again, your departments are small enough where the laws of large numbers don't work well in small groups. So to go, oh, in library, the numbers, whatever, there's one person there. You know, for inspections, okay, we have two. You don't have enough, you know, if we don't have probably 30, 40 people in a department, it's kind of tough to, you know, compare one versus another. It just really means that so-and-so is older than somebody else. Okay, so you're not really getting a whole lot out of that. The next slide is kind of to show you a projection of where the liabilities are going to go over the next 40 years. You know, the numbers on the left, you know, they get terrifying. Oh, we're going to go from $3 million to $13 million, to which people just go, throw up their hands and go, why even try? This is, you know, there's no way we can ever deal with anything like this. So on the far right-hand side, we put numbers in today's dollars. Present value them back at 3% a year. So you can kind of look at things like, what percentage of your budget is it? So you can look at it and go, okay, in today's dollars, right now you're at about $3 million. It'll go up over time to about $3.9, $4 million. So it's going to go up by about 30% over 40 years. The cash cost will go up more significantly because you don't really have much in the way of retirees now. Over time, your existing population will retire. You know, so eventually that number will come up in today's dollars from 44,000, you know, to 170,000 and come back to about 143 in today's dollars. Yeah.
Sorry to keep interrupting.
No, I know.
Column 7 is the number that would hit the town budget.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
I just want to make sure I understood
Yep.
the right column, which
Yeah.
would be what we'd have to, and that if we were fully funded on the liability, if someone magically came into town and gave us $3,051,000 because someone wanted to, that we, in theory, we could pay for the town retirement out of the interest off of that dollar amount? Is that how you come to the liability?
Yes and no. So here's the thing. That $3 million is what's been accrued to date. But remember, your active employees
Oh.
are still accruing benefits.
Right, okay, yep.
So they're accruing $119,000 of new benefits, and then you're paying off $44,000 of old benefits. So at this point, you're still in the accruing more than paying off. But here's the quirk of GASB math, which I don't agree with, but nonetheless, this is the standard the accountants set, is that if
And
you're...
sorry,
Yeah.
for people at home, GASB is the general accepted...
General Accounting Standards Board.
Right, yep. Good.
Basically, for those of you who follow accounting standards and who doesn't, these are the folks who set the rules for such things for governmental and municipal entities. And so what the difference is in the municipal context, in the GASB context, that interest rate I spoke about, the 4.13, is really 5 factors to go into determining what is that interest rate, where is this coming from? The municipal bond index we spoke about, absolutely. Another one is, what's your current value of assets? What are the projected benefit payments each year? How much money are you setting aside each year? And how are you investing that money? And so, and then you go, which one matters? And it depends. different ones have different weight depending on where they sit. And so if somebody came along and gave you $3 million, because, you know, if anyone had $3 million, why they wouldn't bring it here, I have no idea. But let's just say they did that. And so they gave you the $3 million. Well, what would happen is, assuming you're investing this, you know, balanced to aggressive, let's say, you would probably get to use an interest rate in the neighborhood of 6 to 6.25, which would therefore mean your $3 million liability now just became a $2 million liability. So there's a certain circularity to GASB math. The more you fund, the less you have to fund. And that's just, you know, it's their system, I don't make it up. In the corporate world, how much you have in assets and how we fund has nothing to do with your interest rate. But in the municipal world, that's how they set it up, and so that's where we are. So, but to your point, yes, if you were fully funded, at that point you're largely paying the benefits out of the trust. Basically what would happen is you'd put in the 119 in theory, then you take out the 44 to pay that year's benefits. Now by the time we get out to 2045, 2050, at that point your benefit payments have caught up to your service costs. So at that point, you're really a mature plan. You're adding just as much as you're taking out each year. But in the short term, you're still in the, for lack of a word, the installation phase. You put the plan in, you're adding new liability faster than you're paying down liability. Does that make sense? I know I'm throwing a lot of things out.
Enough. I have a couple of later on,
Yeah.
but we'll let you.
No, well, next slide gets you there then, because
No.
magic. Questions, comments, concerns?
So on one of your slides, you had talked about the employer share of the cost. What is
Yep.
the employee share of the cost?
Well, in your guys' case, it's a 50-50 cost sharing. So under this model, the employees would basically pay, you know, half of that amount. So that you pay 44, they pay 44.
And I guess a question for you, where is this money coming from? Because when this was presented to us months ago, there were multiple options on the table as to how this would be funded, and that information has never come back to us. So where is this money going to be coming from?
So my recommendation is to use the 10% of free cash in accordance with the free cash policy that recommends putting in 10% every year. And then what you could do with that is you can put it into the OPEB stabilization, and when you reach a certain amount, you can invest it. And so at like 250, you can invest in PRIT, as Rich I know has talked about a little bit before. So there are different investment options once you hit that certain threshold. But you can also put it in a relatively high yield account at first. A bunch of our stabilization accounts right now, we just shifted over to Unibank at that 4.5% interest rate, which is a lot significantly better than what we were receiving before. But there are much higher yield interest accounts that we can look at.
So then pretty much all the items that they had talked about for potential raising of cash, they're off the table? We're just going to take it out of free cash?
That's, I think, the simplest way to do it. If you're looking at 50-50 instead of 75-25, that's a significant cost savings there, because at the 75-25, your liability was $4.3 million and your annual was $66,000, I think, or $69,000.
About $70,000, yeah.
About $70,000 for the premium. Unfortunately, I know they talked about hotel tax. That's already been absorbed and incorporated into the annual operating budget. The select board could choose to take board and committee members off of health insurance, but they are not eligible for the retiree portion of the health insurance. So there would be a cost savings generated on the active side, but not on the retiree side itself. So it really seemed like the simplest way and the most functional way to do it was to look at the free cash option.
I mean, from my standpoint, the money for this, it could come from free cash, it could come from cost savings, but all that money, whether it be free cash or cost savings, could also go to any other of the needs in town.
Very true.
You know, as a whole, we don't earmark, like, I'm saving money over here to spend it over there.
Right.
And so taking 10% of free cash, putting into this is 10% of free cash that's not available for other town needs and purchases.
That's correct.
That said, and I've been skeptical of this all the way through, Rich, and I've had several conversations, and I've been struggling to find ways to make it work. I am torn between, you know, there is no for-profit business in the country trying to do retiree benefits.
100%.
Matter of fact, the reverse is true. Almost any company, for-profit company in the United States that used to do this is trying desperately to get out of this sort of
We
thing.
got rid of it pretty much
And
across
the more
corporate
people who
30
tell
years
me,
ago.
right, and the more people who tell me that the town should run more like a business, you know, should think about some of those things as well. That said, you're totally right, and the people who've talked to me about it, is that losing employees to other towns because we're one of 6 in the state that don't do this.
Less than 10.
Yeah, is amazing. And so I would really love to, I could see myself being in favor of this if we coupled it with some cost savings on the other end. Whether it be cost savings between removing elected officials who currently, under the employee policy, wouldn't qualify for health insurance from getting health insurance with some sort of fair phasing out, because I'd hate to tell someone like January 5th that you're not getting insurance in February. That would be beyond cruel. I think plan redesign, because this is clear. Several of the town unions have been pushing for this for a while, and I think they should be pushing for it. I think here's a chance that there's some cost and some I think minor plan redesign or changing the way the split goes, because 75-25 is also not what a lot of places are going for at this point. Actually, are we 75-25 for? Yeah.
We are.
But looking where some of those other cost savings, so that we can say, look, we've cut the budget by X to come the money, and then I wouldn't care where it comes from, the regular budget or free cash, if we saw an annual savings of about the same as being cut at the same time we approve this.
And if I can just make 2 quick comments on that. On the elected official, I agree with you. It would have to be, they'd be phased out either for their current term or until they no longer serve in that office. And then in plan redesign, just remember last year the employees saved the town almost $33,000 by adding deductibles, and part of that was a good faith effort to show that they want to save the town with an eye toward this benefit.
Yeah, I mean, let's say we're 20% more generous than other towns. I wouldn't necessarily look for a 20% sort of cut. I think there's something that, fits about the amount of money this costs out there. And I, sadly, still a little confused about the flow of cash. And so, let's say we did this effective for fiscal year 24, and in fiscal year 24, we have some employees that would qualify and go on it. The check we're writing at the end of the year is for those employees only, or are we also potentially, we have a fund?
Well,
I'm just trying to figure out how much we're really writing a check for.
There's 2 elements here.
Right.
So we have the current year costs,
right,
which is, you have 7 retirees and they generate $50,000 a year of expenses. For your share of the premiums, you write that $50,000 check, you pay the bill. You have no obligation to fund beyond that. Now you can, because you go, hey, listen, I got a $3 million liability. I want to start, knocking that down. And that's what most people are doing now, is they're setting aside a fund, be with Bartholomew, Rockland, Pritt, PARS. Those are really the 4 main providers. You can set up money with them. You set money in every year. You set up a policy if we're going to set up, whatever, $25,000 a year going up at $5,000 a year until pension funding is fully paid off, and you can take the savings on pension funding and roll that into OPEB in 2036. There are ways to go about it. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. And again, none of my business however you want to do it. But if you have a plan, there's the required fund each year's cost. That's the $44,980. That trust contribution, there's no obligation to put in $1. Now I didn't research your guys' bond rating, and I know nothing about that. But one of the things to keep in mind, you talk to your merit research folks and your other folks that you guys deal with, is like all things, you want to be able to show them we have a financial statement, we're addressing the issues on the financial statement. So I would think if you were to put in a plan, you want to have a plan to start chipping away in some credible format. Again, whether it's you start at 20,000, you go up by $5,000 a year, whatever the numbers are. To me, the issues are less about what the numbers are than the fact there is a plan in place. And again, I don't work for the S&P or Moody's or Fitch, so keep that in mind. But I mean, every time we've talked to them, that's what they want to hear, is just a plan.
And so to clear, for your slide you have right there, you have both the number of 119,000 and 45,000.
Yeah.
It is the 45,000 that in theory we're writing each year. Because 119 is sort of a liability, would be nice to fund, but there's not a cash requirement for 119.
Yeah, the one that, if you think about it in a sense, it's not the exact methodology, but it's almost like the 119 is an interest-only mortgage, the 119 is keep adding on top of your existing debt. And the 44 is the payment you're making on the debt. If that helps.
So question for you, maybe over to Kristen Parker. You had said that obviously pensions have a mandate. We all know that. We've all been caught in that. that the state doesn't have a mandate to fund these.
Correct.
So what happens when we can't cut a check for $45,000?
That's not one you really have a choice in. That's you've made the commitment of a 32B, and you've got to come up with, you provided the benefits to people, Maya sends you the bill, you got to pay your share of the bill. The employees pay their share, you got to pay your share. So yeah, here is the, it's much like the pension system in Mass, in the sense going, once you opt in, you're in. It's not a matter of going, to your point about in corporate America, we got rid of these things 30 years ago. There is no facility in Massachusetts for you as a town to decide, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm taking my ball and going home. That is not one of the options. So when you're in, you're in. And so to your point, that $44,000, you're going to come up with it every year. So it is a very credible part of the budget you have to have. And again, I mean, it's good, bad, and indifferent. I think, like you said, there's ways to manage it, but it's a cost. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
It would be kind of equal to a 1 half-time person. And you couldn't just say, no, we're not paying for that anymore.
Oh, I understand that, but, as we were just discussing a few moments ago in regard to, we're not talking, any discussion with budget, we're not talking about layoffs and things like that. But now all of a sudden, if we have to come up with $45,000 and the town is strapped for whatever, God forbid, that there is no catastrophe in the town and free cash is dwindling every year and going down and down and down, who bears the brunt of that $45,000 that we have to put in? An employee? Services?
You would budget for it every year, I would assume.
Right, it would
Am I
go in
correct?
as part of, so it would be the same as saying you have a budget right now for 32B for active employees. So that budget would be built and increased permanently
Yeah.
to include the retiree premiums.
Right. In some respects, like when Worcester retirement goes up, we just have to, because we've committed to it. When health insurance goes up, we have to commit. Health insurance, we have a little bit more play because you can play with, what gets covered, which we could in the future as well.
Yeah.
But that, you're right, it becomes something that we just, sadly, once we commit to it, have to do.
Right.
That's
Or maybe
why we're
right
being
or
very
wrong,
careful
once you
about
commit to
this.
it.
Yeah, no, that's what I tell clients
Which-
all the time is, Massachusetts, unlike the other states we work in, good, bad, or indifferent, the rules are much more top-down. So we don't have the levers I have in other states to move liabilities around. Here, I can't change the eligibility to get benefits. The state sets that. I'm not allowed to charge retirees more than 50% of pay.
Right.
And 50% of the benefit. The state sets that.
Right.
I can't vary it by saying, hey, the person who worked for 35 years, why do they pay the same as would have worked for 10? The state says that. I can't do anything about that. In other states, we do a lot of those things in California or Texas or Nevada. I do a lot of things.
And to be fair, it wouldn't be fair for someone to say you have retiree health benefits and then 5 years from now say we don't have enough money and take it out from underneath them. They worked for the town based on an agreement. I mean, it's one of those, that's the scary part about it, is that you're making a almost forever commitment once you decide to do this. But from a fairness standpoint, once you make the commitment to pull it out, those corporations that declare bankruptcy to take away someone's health insurance and pension plans is problematic. And I wouldn't want us to be in a bucket where we ever did something like that.
Yep.
You have a question, Julie?
I do, if you don't mind.
Yes.
When you're talking about the liability and the insurance, the town has the option every year to pick a different plan. So you're
Correct.
not committing to the same level of insurance coverage. You're
Correct.
just committing to a medical insurance plan. So one of the impacts might be how you decide in the future the coverage for both working employees and retired employees will be impacted by having to fund the retired employees?
Or both, depending on what your budget cuts need to be. So for example, this past year, there was going to be a 10.5% increase on health insurance for active employees. So what you look at is plan redesign. So in this case, there were no deductibles. So we instituted a $250 single $750 family deductible. As a result of that, that brought the increase down to 4% and change. So you can look at doing that. You can do that on the retiree side as well. And that is a way to offset it. So you always keep, it's one of the reasons that the GIC is not something I'm a giant fan of, because you lose control over plan redesign, and that is a place where you can experience cost savings.
Oh, if you go with this, you can't?
No, this you can. I'm sorry, the government, the state health insurance plans, going with like a Maya or being able to shop on the open market gives you that flexibility and freedom of the plan redesign, and being able to put deductibles in, or adding copays or increasing copays and things that help offset the cost of the premium. So, and with the town picking up half, or in this case 75% now because we have active employees, that's a significant cost savings, a difference between a 4% premium increase and a 10% premium increase.
Do you have a question, Claire?
Yes, I had a question on the 45,000. Is that per person per year?
No, that's for the current block of retirees.
Okay.
So it goes up over time as you add more retirees, but currently, at least under the model we had, I believe it's 7, but I want to validate that. I want to say it's 7 retirees / spouses, I believe. Yes, no, 6.
Okay.
So that's 6 retirees and spouses.
And is there, if we were looking at a plan redesign of some sort, is there an opportunity there for the, to design the plan in such a way so that people retiring from age 55 to age 60 would get this much of an employer contribution, and people retiring from age 60 to 65 would get this much of an employer contribution?
No, I mean, under the rules, the state mandates that we can't have age-based premiums. So we're not allowed to do that under Mass General Law. So if it's going to be 55 to 65, you can say you're going to keep it 75-25 or 50-50, or however you want to do that, but you can't say, you can't vary it like that. So you're going to be at, again, 50-50 or 75-25 or whatever you want to be, but you're going to be
Right.
one way across.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of organizations, because organizations have to do that.
Yeah, no.
And you get your insurance based on when you retire, that sort of.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's the difference in Mass versus other states. Here,
if you wait.
the reality is if you retire earlier, you get a larger benefit. In a pension context, you retire earlier, I cut the benefit because you get it for a longer period of time.
Right.
In an OPEB context, you retire earlier, you get a bigger benefit for a longer period of time. And that's just the reality of the way OPEB works. So like I said, in other states, like in California, we have a points-based system we use, and in Nevada, we do certain things. But in Mass, we're not allowed to do those things here.
So there, just to add on to
Yeah.
that, there was a Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ruling back in 2015 where there was a person, I believe named Galinsky, who took on the town of Irving, and they basically said a municipality can't give different plans to different retirees or different benefits to different retirees. So you can't say you can have a year of service requirement. You can't say you have to have worked for the town for 10 years. You can't say you have to have been on the town's insurance for a certain number of years. So going along with that ruling, it would speak to, you know, giving something different for those first 10 years, unfortunately. What you can do is say we're going to put on Medicare and fund that supplement plan, and that has a significant cost savings. You estimate about 80 or 85% over what the non-Medicare plans come from, because then you're just splitting the supplement plan.
And I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Scott, you have a question?
Yes, are we a little bit susceptible to, if the Medicare age was increased to say 68, would that be where extra cost because we have a bigger gap before we get to the reduction to a supplemental plan?
I mean, if indeed Medicare were to go in that direction, yeah, you would have more years of non-Medicare coverage, absolutely. Again, forecasting what Congress is going to do, if you can do that, you're far smarter than I am. There's a lot of, there are many people that want to take Medicare down to 62 or 55. There are many people who want to take it later. My basic philosophy on Congress is generally bet on inaction, and you'll not be terribly far wrong. Gridlock is the word of the day, so I don't see in the near term any large changes in either direction going. But, you know, you just never know where it's going to go, so you have to value the things as they currently exist.
Is there any other questions?
All your numbers are, of course, based on assumptions. None of us can really
100%.
forecast the future. And so if for some reason the town hired for 6 years people who are all 1 year away from retirement who all retired 1 year, that go up at the same time. If the town ended up hiring potentially younger folks who all went, despite having this, went to other towns, this number could go down. And so
Yeah.
it's just all based on, again, best guess of based on towns around us and years of experience, both with this type of program in other towns and your companies to come
To
up
your
with.
point, that is the one quirk of OPEB versus, say, the pension plan. In the pension plan, if I work here for 12 years and I go, next door for 12 years, my 12 years of service, the money follows me to the next town. In the OPEB context, there is no money to follow anybody.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is the last person standing gets stuck with the bill. And so I had this about 2 years ago during COVID. We had one of our towns, they hired a teacher who was like 63 years old, great. And she retired after 1 year. She'd been like 35 years somewhere else. And so they got the entire, basically $250,000 bill for that 1 year of service. And I'm sure the other towns who were 35 years said, thank you very much, we appreciate it. Hopefully they sent a nice flower basket and things like that. But that's the reality. And so yes, Mass did a thing with Section 9A.5 to try and get people to pay their share, and that got repealed in the Mass Modernization Act. So yeah, to your point, whoever's the last person hiring, owning that retiree or having that retiree where they retire from, they're the ones who get the bill.
Okay, a lot to think about.
I was just gonna say too, if there aren't any more questions for Parker, Rich Hanks, the chair of the Insurance Advisory Committee, is here on the policy side if you have any questions there. So we did give a draft what a policy would look like. Obviously, that would not be adopted by the select board until that chapter of MGL is adopted by, if and when such a time comes when that was adopted by town meeting, but wanting to give you an idea of what such a policy would look like.
Okay. Rich, is there anything you want to share with us, or?
You wanna come up, Rich?
Of course I do.
All right.
We were hoping they would ask.
I was hoping you'd ask.
Come on.
I wasn't gonna leave you, I was waiting.
Sitting next to Parker. So again, we did a lot of due diligence on the policy to try and get it, tailor it so that it would be, it wouldn't favor anybody for just getting employed and leaving, just to get the benefit of OPEB. So Kristen did a lot of work, got a lot of input from town council and from our from cooking associates as to what can legally be in a policy. So we think we've come up with a pretty decent policy that kind of addresses a lot of the concerns that you all had in the past. So that's what this is tailored after. So I don't know if you have any specific questions on it.
I'll ask the board first.
No, some of the questions I had earlier, I think have been answered in some respects, that the state doesn't give us a lot of flexibility. Exactly what you just said, is that we wanted to say you had to work for the town of Berlin for 5 years. We want to say is that's just generally not allowed by state law. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't do those sort of things.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess one of the other things I do want to add, I'm going to circle back a little bit, is as to what Kristen said, your question of where's the money going to come up with for that $44,000 contribution. Last year, there was plan modifications made that doing around $32,000.
33, yep.
So there's a big chunk of that, and the hard thing that it's really difficult to analyze and put a number on or value is the employee retention and training. I know police are constantly sending people to the academy. They're here for a year or two and then they're gone. So you paid to send them, you paid to train them, you paid to outfit them. Same with fire. By the time you pay for all the turnout gear for a firefighter and stuff like that. One of the things I had done at the very beginning of this was that I just took the top dollar pay for a senior police officer versus a entry-level police officer come in. And there was a savings of about $400 a week, just by allowing that top tier police officer to be able to retire out. So that, $400 a week times 52 weeks is $20,000 a year savings on the wage.
True, although devil's advocate is if they left the town a year or two early instead of going out in charge, we also save those same savings, and include in savings the OPEB. But yes, I agree that turnover can be an issue. Do we do exit interviews for town employees to know how many left because mentioned as one of their reasons retiree health benefits?
I haven't specifically asked that question, but I have been told by at least one employee in an exit interview that that was a reason. And I can tell you that the employee was mid-50s and said, I'm not going to wait until I'm 62 or 63 to try to find another job that is going to hire me, because at that point I'm less desirable to be hired at a brand new place and get established right before I'm not going to be eligible for those benefits. And I think the challenge you face is, I know even somebody at my age, I look and I go, well, I've got 20 some odd years before I retire, which is fantastic, but I like to stay in a place for a long time. So, you know, if in 10 years this isn't set and I want to be here for 20 years, what do I do at that point? And I think you have to take that into account with some of the younger employees as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of attrition through the schools, administrators, even some employees here that have left have said that was one of the reasons. It is a big deal.
And I've heard frustration.
It makes us less competitive, and it really hurts to see the employee move to, say, Northborough or Bolton or Hudson, or, you know, because they may have those types of amenities when Berlin does not.
Right, but to be fair too, people that have left, that have said that they're leaving because of retirement, have also left for giant increases that the town can't match. And at the same time too, if I'm being hired and you're being totally honest with me and you're telling me, Peg, we don't have blah, 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 that needs to be on the table, so that I'm given that decision at that point in time to say, no worries, I gotcha, I'm coming on board, or hey, no thanks. So I think you have to look at both pieces of, you know, of that, and just to say, oh, well, people are leaving because we don't have retirement, I don't think that there's the data to back it up.
Over the years, I mean, I've been involved in the town for about 24 years now, and I've seen a lot of it. So it is a huge factor.
I mean, if it wasn't a big issue, I don't think the union, it wouldn't be a regular conversation in union contract negotiations. 'Cause I believe the unions do represent their cohorts, and they do bring it up often.
And I think that that's one reason why the teachers were very much in favor of regionalization, because then the Berlin teachers would get their retiree health insurance.
You have a couple people in the back, I think, want to make a comment.
Oh, that was the clarification I want. All the teachers for Berlin, Tonto, et cetera,
they have it.
Regionalization, they get their retirement benefits through that agreement. So they're not part of this.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's much fewer employees now that we don't include the school in this.
Okay. Thank you.
And, oh well, sorry, went right out of my head.
It's probably the best thing ever, too.
Yeah.
Dave.
I'll speak on behalf of the union, and I'll speak on behalf of the morale. It's terrible, because we've kicked this can down the road 10 years. The teachers signed a regional contract and went to the district, and they're covered. You're still paying for it. It's just in a different fund. The group has worked for 5 years to come up with sources, and as Selectman Stone said, you know, we've seen these options. Where's the money come from? We looked at 10 different options. We had the commitment of free cash. We, as an IAC group, lowered and brought back $32,000 with good faith effort, and we joined the OPEB, or voted to be opportunists in that, for the opportunity to generate money that would offset the liability. And I think we can't candy coat it. The morale is not good. It is not good. Department heads will tell you different. The employees are listening tonight. We have 3 new hires right now that are looking this, would like to stay here. It's a big investment. And I can look in just the police department, we're talking $1 million in costs in the last 7 years through employee retention, losing them. It costs us $100,000 to train someone. Insurance, cars, things like that, and they leave. And I do know they've said at exit interviews it's benefits, you know, on some of them, even though it's not an asked question. So I just want the citizens to know, if we're going to invest in our employees and retain them, there is a cost. And if I understand the scary cost of the $3 million, because I would leave the TV tonight going, oh my God, $3 million, when the real figure is $44,000 that we have an opportunity to you as a board to make investments at interest rates I'm hearing are better than I can get to return this cost, to offset the cost. And there's a mortality rate too. Not all people are gonna live to 90, so they come off the insurance too.
Yeah.
But, you know, we benefit, it's the right thing to do for the employees, being one of 5 towns that don't have it. Your employees go above and beyond with the hopes and the investment. And when I talk to the residents, they're all shocked, they don't know. And I know they're up against a rock and a hard place with finances and things like that, but I know we don't do it, but we have no problem calling other towns when we need help from them that invest in their employees in emergency fires, situations, you know. The board doesn't get to 495 and at the Berlin part stop and say, I'm not gonna use the rest of part of the state. We have to take care of our employees. The wrong message keeps coming back, and the union brings us up every time, and the non-union employees feel that way too. And I understand your commitment to the budgets, but the real cost here is a lot greater.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, if I may add just one thing, I think the reality, and regardless how you feel about the retention or even the cost, I think it literally boils down to the fact that you've got 95% of cities and towns in Massachusetts that offer this benefit. It is expected. And so it is a competitive issue. And so that is the decision I think that the board has to look at. If there is a way that we can fund this, and I think there is, I think we should fund it from a morale perspective, but it's just the challenge of from an HR perspective when you look at the hiring, and that I have felt I've had to try and disclose that, which is not a conversation that normally comes up in a hiring interview, or anything like that. It's now something where I literally feel, because it is expected, and we are the exception. So that is the challenge. If it is something we can look at and be able to fund, it certainly impacts us on a competitiveness standpoint.
It does.
And so, how do we, where's the goal of tonight? I am probably leaning more towards it than I have in the past. I would love to see a motion that sort of, again, ties some sort of change with approving it. This needs some approval at town meeting anyway, no matter what we do tonight. So how do we get that?
What is your pleasure, Scott?
I was gonna say, I wouldn't be ready to vote on something because I think I'd like to hear more from some other folks to where are some of those costs saved. Even if we remove the elected officials, what's the right way of doing that without being mean? What are the union contracts are obviously not currently up, and so negotiating that, but they did do a good faith effort the last time, and so maybe there's just another. We're going to take a step with the understanding there will probably be some minor plan designs expected, when the contracts come back up. But I think those are details I'd like to see more of before I'm ready to say yes to this and get ready to put it on a town meeting warrant with our support.
I was going to say
my support, because I can't speak for the two of them.
My suggestion would be, and because my understanding, and obviously I've only been in this a year, but my understanding is there's been a lot that's gone into this, even predating me, in terms of recommending options for cost savings, and I can certainly put that together. If it's something that in principle, when you look at the actuarial study, when you look at the policy, when you listen to the employees, I would really love to see whether or not the board would take a vote to put on the warrant the acceptance of Chapter 32B, Section 9A, which would authorize the town to pay 50% of the retiree premium and allow the voters to make that decision.
That would move us forward, I suppose, in such a way, I guess.
Right, are we building the town meeting agenda currently?
We will be soon. We're going to open the warrant tonight.
I think putting a placeholder on it for this, again, I'd like to see a few more details. And you mentioned it, Peg, that there was an email about a list of potential cost savings that I believe you wrote, Richard. I thought there was a great email that listed a half dozen places where the largest one was removing elected officials from the current health insurance. And I searched.
There was a savings of between 80 to 90,000.
Right. I thought that was more than enough to start recording this. I, for the life of me, could not find that email over the last couple of days and searching for it. And I believe you've written it, you've referenced it, we all remember seeing it. If we could try to find that email, that would be great, because I think it listed a couple other things, all of which I thought were relatively decent ideas that made sense, that weren't overly painful from a macro standpoint, because any individual impacted, it's more painful to them than the, but just see if there's anything else.
So to that point, Scott, one of the other things that we looked at being the IAC was, one was, again, phasing out the elected people, but also, and I think Cook and Company said that they could pay a different rate. They could pay 50/50.
Right.
And that was a savings, I think, of around $35,000 a year just on that. So there are other cost savings mechanisms available.
Yeah, I
And
think
I can go back
the
to my
50/50
notes.
that lowers the amount that we have to pay out annually. I think removing some elected officials who don't otherwise qualify. We have some elected officials who put in the more than 20 to 30 hours a week, who obviously wouldn't be impacted, but who don't qualify under our current standards, who qualify for health insurance. I think probably is enough to get us close enough, because I think plan redesign is something that should come up like every couple of years, regardless of whether or not we're doing our retiree health benefits.
I would really like to hear from Finance Committee. I mean, I know Julie's here and Scott's here, but the rest of them aren't here, and because it's not, they didn't post a meeting, they really can't discuss and talk about things. So I would like to hear from them, not obviously tonight or on Wednesday,
I
but,
just want to point out, we did put it on the agenda for
Right.
this Wednesday.
oh,
good.
for this Wednesday?
After we have we're doing the budget reviews, so after the budget reviews, we're gonna discuss.
It's back on? All right.
Yeah.
Good job, Scott.
The big issue is that I don't think really many members of the present Finance Committee have been involved in previous
Correct.
discussions. As much as we talked about the 10% from doing from free cash, I rejoined the committee in '21. It wasn't there when, it was already there when I rejoined. And so that's 3 members right there. I know Julie only predated me by 6 months. I don't know, were you involved in that 10% plan for cap from free cash?
I was not involved. It was basically presented that we want to have buckets for free cash. And as the issue was brought up before, free cash is very unpredictable. The idea, though, is that when it came in every year, certain things would be guaranteed to be saved in those buckets. So we would have funding going forward. But it's not guaranteed. If you had like $100 from free cash in 1 year, so it was like 10%, it's like $10, right?
So are you going to the Finance Committee meeting?
I am.
Okay, can you get back to us as to how the Finance Committee feels about it?
I can.
How's that?
Well, I plan on going anyways.
Oh, okay.
Richard, one of the items that you
Or we
had
still
talked
wanna
about,
go?
Yes.
I don't want to throw my pen at you because I
Please
broke
don't.
my cap and I'd be afraid if I went like this, I'd
Throw
hit
mine
you.
back at you.
One of the items that you had talked about was potentially selling of buildings in town. And given the assessments on the buildings, this might be an opportunity to do something and, get outside of the box of we can't do blah, 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 but to look at what can we do, because let's be honest, the assessments were not favorable for any of the buildings in town with the exception of one. So you might be able to pick up some cost savings there as to what to do with it, so we can.
I think one of the suggestions is the old highway garage.
You know what? I mean, I know that we're talking about that on Thursday, but honestly, out of all the buildings, I would rather save that one and try and do something with it, and then tear down and get rid of, sell, do something with other buildings that have poor written all over them, that really cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to really get back up to speed. So
Yeah, there's not.
the highway barn, I'd love to save and repurpose, discussion for Thursday. But I think there's some other options with some of the dilapidated buildings in town and or land with those buildings that we can do.
So,
More to come.
yeah.
I'm open to your suggestions,
Yeah.
Meg.
I got you, Mr. Hanks. Okay.
So, Kevin, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Yeah,
I know you had your hand up.
I did.
Okey doke. All right.
I think it's helpful to know that that we can gather some additional information, and there is a a willingness to hear more. I think the sentiment I was getting from the IAC was sort of like, we don't want to just spin our wheels if it's a definite no. So I think tonight, you know, just understanding if this is something you're willing to at least consider, we can continue to explore and have that conversation and look at those other options. I think that's likely helpful for the IAC to hear.
So if we put this on another future agenda, you'll be willing to come back again?
Me? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You and any of the other IAC members?
Yeah.
Great.
I don't think Parker would like to come back.
Well, he's always invited if he wants to come, but that's
Be
up to
afraid,
him.
Parker. I will find questions that have never been asked of you before, so you just may end up
all
coming
kinds of
back.
questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you've done some great work. I dug into it deeply. Again, I've been highly skeptical, and I really wanted to understand it better. And I think between going to 50-50 instead of 75-25, and if we remove some elected officials from the health insurance, I think it becomes something that is sort of net neutral to the taxpayers just on its face, not counting any potential savings from less turnover.
Dave, can I just ask you, do you know if the retirees at the school get 50-50?
Currently, they're at 50-50, and I don't know what their next contract will be as
Okay.
it merged. That was the first settlement.
Well, I was pretty sure it was, because when I left school committee it was, but I didn't know if they'd changed it. So I feel like that's in our area and
In your
a
geography, that's
good
the norm.
comparison, yeah.
You'd actually have
Thank
to
you.
adopt a different section of Chapter
Right.
32B to do more
Yeah.
than 50% of the retiree premium.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Scott, thank you for looking at numbers. I wanted to ask Parker how he came up with the peers of those towns, because as someone in the union and also employed, their salaries are far greater than us too. So I want to be careful as the audience listens. You call them peers, and I don't know why they're peers, but their salaries are much higher.
Yeah, I have no idea what the salaries are. That's not, we're looking at, like I said, geography, population size,
Right.
similar size groups. So yeah, I don't get involved in pay rates. None of my business. I stay out of that. But no, we're just trying to look for, representative samples geographically, or again, similar size entities or things like that. So.
Well, I appreciate everybody's patience and willing to be good listeners. And I think we probably ought to move on.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Kristen, do you want one plug? Is there anything else to be shown tonight?
Nope, we're good.
So fortunately, I guess, our public hearing for the National Grid poll hearing, or poll petition, has been canceled.
Thank you.
Due to the storm, no one was able to come out. So we're moving on to talk about the rail trail.
Just one moment. Can we get a vote to continue that to January 22nd?
Oh, yes, yes.
And I believe we
I didn't know if we had a
actually-
date.
We renoticed that, I believe, at 7:30D. Is that correct? Or did we not renotice it yet?
Actually, I didn't renotice yet because I'm waiting for a updated abutters list
Okay.
before I put that out, but I think it's going to be more towards 8 o'clock again.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
We could do 8 then on,
Okay, so we
continue to the 22nd at 8 o'clock.
I will move that we continue the public hearing for the National Grid poll until 8 p.m. on January 22nd.
Sure.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And moving on to discuss the $100,000 state earmark for the rail trail.
I'd like to say one thing of breaking news before we speak, and I know that Carolyn and Robin are here from Conservation, want to share some information as well. We received a call late Friday afternoon at 4:52, I think it was, from the state asking if we had received all of our earmarks, which I thought was a bit of a strange conversation. So when the Globe put an article out on Sunday that Governor Healy intends to cut local earmarks to balance the budget, then I understood why. At this point, from what I hear from surrounding towns, they've had earmarks cut by 50%. I think we would be lucky if we get $50,000 now out of this. So I would urge the board to make a decision this evening because I think that funding is at significant risk.
And again, this is only a decision to accept the money. We do not actually have to provide any more details than that we accept the money to.
And if we can provide the $40,000 match
Well,
for the
yeah.
grant, because that has to go in by February 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can actually do 30,000. We can cut it back to
Okay.
30,000 based on what we're asking for.
Okay, so with that, if you want to turn it over to Robin and
Yes.
Carolyn. Come on up. Come on down, the price is right.
Want to sit in the hot seats?
You're on the wrong side of my table.
I know.
Welcome back.
Wednesdays.
Thank you. All right. So I tried to provide some information, some kind of question answer information in your packet this evening, and I know I've spoken to Robin and Carolyn and trying to kind of just have a brief discussion about, I know you wanted to speak a bit about alternatives and, you know, that might be challenging, and you wanted to share your perspective on that as well, so.
Right. Go first? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Okay. So basically, as we all understand, the Conservation Commission is looking to apply for a grant, a matching grant?
Mm-hmm.
A matching grant that will give us money to do a feasibility study. Some years ago, when was the big one done? 2021?
2021.
In 2021, the state did a feasibility study for the entire length of the Central Mass Central Rail Trail, right? With the expectation that individual communities would then do their own hyper-focused on their own communities. And so since construction, for the longest time, nothing was really going on. There was all kinds of lawsuits happening in Sudbury. That has all now been cleared. Eversource is moving through with their project, and the rail trail will be coming through Sudbury into Hudson. Hudson is already working on their own feasibility study. So we feel now the time has come for us to also do that. So at first we had put in an application for CPA funds, and then we found out about the state money. So we have not yet pulled the CPA fund application because we want to make sure that funds are secured a different way. But our intention will be to pull the CPA application if we get funding somewhere else from the state for free.
Yeah, and just to add, Hudson is actually working on their design already. It's not just a feasibility study, so they've moved forward. They got the Mass Trails grant last year to do 10% design, and they've actually, they've applied for other grants, and they're hoping to complete 100% design in the next year or so. So they're moving forward with the section to the Bolton line. And then the DCR said that once Hudson and Berlin move forward, they're going to take care of the Bolton section. So Bolton, the town of Bolton is kind of out of that. So
it's literally
like 100
can be
yards.
measured in feet.
Yeah.
It's tiny. So,
Yeah.
but it's moving forward in Hudson, and the MassDOT and the DCR intend to bring it all the way to Coburn Road, the whole DCR leased portion, as part of the next phase of the project.
Okay. Questions? Don't throw your pen.
No,
I heard that.
I already broke. I broke my cap.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Take your
That's right. You must
shield
wear
off.
eye protection when you come to the board.
My notepad.
So no, there's, as you both know, and as people here know, and there know, that there's always lots of scuttle and incorrect facts that become facts, and finger pointing and name calling when you're on the wrong side of the discussion. So I want to ask very pointed questions to get very pointed answers, so nonsense that is out there stops. All right,
Good luck.
I know that. It's my intent. All right, so, you had alluded to it. The only point of the assessment that we're talking about is Coburn to Shiro.
To the Berlin, I think
Yeah,
Shiro, actually, I think it
Shiro a
crosses
little bit
the
more.
street, but
Okay,
yes.
so just that 3 miles of, 3-ish.
Yeah, that's what the
Miles.
state would build
Okay.
in the next phase of the project. So
Right.
they're looking to get that, Coburn Road seems to be the most sensible place to stop because it's not really clear after, west of there where it would go. I think they own a little bit further west of there, but we're looking at Coburn Road to the town line.
Okay, so that way.
East section, yeah.
So what about Coburn Road going that way to Clinton, since now part of the land that was looked at years ago has now become private land and there's houses on there?
So that's the thing, if we can get this earmark, the matching amount to do the Mass Trails grant, we could put together a proposal, we could ask for a proposal that would be 2 phases. So we could ask them to do the feasibility study on the east side, and if funds allow, we could also ask for that section as well. So, but the primary focus right now is to Coburn Road, but if the select board agrees to allow us to move, request that at least to get pricing on it, we may be able, with this grant, to get the full feasibility study done for the whole town. But that section west of Coburn Road is gonna be a much heavier lift, so I don't know if it's gonna be possible.
All right.
Right, and again, it's just to study.
Yeah, it's not committing to
Right.
anything.
And that's like the part B of security and maintenance and all that other
All of that
stuff
stuff
is a question for tomorrow.
Yep.
Once we get the assessment, if voted on and if we go,
Correct.
done. Crap, I lost my question. Didn't you write it down here? Oh, I've got questions all
I know.
over the place.
I'm gonna take the pen away from you.
No.
So we can catch up.
No. Kristen, I had asked this question, and I think, Robin, you confirmed it, that the DCR rep funding said the language is not specific to any one site, and she is sure it can be used for any rail trail site. Does rail trail literally just mean a rail trail, or are we looking at other parts of Berlin, AKA Aqueduct and the Ross Dam?
So the Berlin section of the aqueducts is in really good shape. Once that project goes forward, there's not a lot to do in Berlin for that section, so the bigger issues are in other towns, so that's gonna be a while before they
Okay.
do anything there to connect it, and that would also be part of the west side section, because it would connect at Five Corners. So there's really nothing to study there for us. I mean, there's only a couple of road crossings that would be an issue, but like, if anybody's ever walked down there, it's really well developed. There's a transmission line going through there, there's the aqueducts. So from, there's not really much that's worth us investing time in.
Well, the only reason that I asked is that it was brought up by a resident a couple meetings ago to make sure that whatever the study was done is that it's looking at all possibilities.
That's
and not
definitely-
just,
yeah,
I'm
right.
coming down the trail.
No. So that would be part of that, the other feasibilities, looking at
Phase
the,
two.
phase 2, to look at how that connects all at Five Corners. So I think the state intends, when they get to that point, to look at the whole Five Corners intersection, not just a pedestrian bridge there. It would look at the traffic pattern there as well. So again, it's a much
But-
heavier lift on that side of town.
But sort of when it comes to building rail trails, the state funding right now is really only for the Central Mass Rail Trail. If we were doing other trails in town, that's likely to be more on the town tax dollars than the Central Rail Trail
Exactly.
right
So
now.
this is, the Mass Central is prioritized in the state. It has been for decades. It's one of like their top 10 projects that they're looking to fund and complete. So, if we came in there and asked for funds for another project, we may not get it. But the Mass Trails grant, we've pretty much been assured that we're gonna get it.
So let's say we're pretending.
Perfect world?
Yes.
Disagreements on some things, so.
So let's say that there's a vote tonight by the select board and we say, yep, it's $100,000, free cash,
Free money.
Free money, free money, let's go get a study, off we go. There is nothing in writing that requires the town to do anything based on that assessment?
Correct.
And let's say that it comes back and the assessment comes back, and I don't know what it could say, but we as a town go, holy crap, that's a boatload of money that's gonna trickle down to people's taxes, we're not doing anything. Again, example, not true, we're not doing anything. because the state leases the land, they can come in and basically do what they want.
100%.
And we're gonna get stuck with a bill regardless.
The main reason that we would want to do this study would be so that we would be able to have some sort of seat at the table during the design process.
Yeah, so as part of this, we could say we want to look at road crossings at like, say, at 62 where it crosses, Sawyer Hill crosses, or Gates Pond, or wherever. So like, the state's not going to look at any of that if they don't have to. So that's where the town has an opportunity to weigh in on those things, the things that we know would be important.
Parking.
Yep, exactly.
Chair, if I could, the scope for tonight, because I think there's a long discussions, and I think you guys have a big meeting coming up on the 17th to talk about the rail trail some more as well. I think the scope for tonight is, one, to accept the $100,000 and to commit up to 40,000 of it as a match for this grant, for the feasibility study grant. And that we won't tonight, 'cause I'm not prepared, and I think there's a lot more discussion of what to do with the other potential 60,000 of that.
Should we actually
Should you actually get the grant, right.
I would narrow it to that, particularly in light of the potential reduction / elimination of the state money.
And that the feasibility study grant that you folks are planning on applying for, that this 40,000 would be a match for, is really for the Central Mass Rail Trail.
Yeah.
Yes.
They basically assured us that we would get the money for that project.
Okay, is that a motion?
It could be a motion, sure. I'll do the motion that we accept the $100,000 state earmark, and that we commit up to 40,000 of that as a matching for the Mass Rail Trail grant. If I've said the name of the grant wrong, fix it in the minutes. Mass Trails grant that the Conservation Commission is applying for.
And could we request proposals for phase 1 and 2 to also potentially study?
Yes, I would like it to include, the two phases to go to the west side as well. Okay. And it could be, if we get the grant and we get the $100,000 and it's only a few bucks more, that we might actually throw in some more money to make sure, because I think that side is where the more contentious stuff is, and as you point out, the bigger problems.
Right.
If you look at the state study, there's like, we don't know what we're doing in like this section of Berlin. Like, great, that's a question that's going to have to be answered at some point, because there's a house there. We're not going to go through their living room with a bike trail. So,
may I ask one clarifying question?
Yep.
You said accept the earmark and the 40K match for the Mass Trails grant.
Right.
I think the location should be specified, because we're going to be asked.
For the Mass Central Rail Trail.
Yes, the Mass Central Rail Trail.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Mass Trails grant.
It's the Mass Trails grant for the Central Mass Rail Trail, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, got it.
Let's just use the same words in different orders over and over.
I would love the select board to also be able to say that we support the grant and add a letter of support in the grant application.
That would be fabulous.
So it's 3 parts, and if they end up having to be divided, we'll live with that.
So you've made the motion. Do I hear a second?
Sure.
Okay. And
I have tons
Sue,
of questions.
you had a question?
I just have a suggestion. As I was on the rail trail committee before and got all the barbs and the nasty comments, and I see them starting again, I think it'd be a really good suggestion if Concom, Friends of the Rail Trail, all of you, get a copy of DCR's requirements, parameters, whatever you want to call it for the trail, and make it public. Everybody get to know it. Because that was a huge issue with, someone else would say, we're going to do it this way, and it was, well, the state said you can't. And then it became so contentious, and I can see it already starting on Facebook again. And I think to stop it, if everybody could get the DCR requirements out so people can see it. We've heard, there are changes since you did that report. Well, great, I'm glad there are changes.
What have you done?
See it right.
So that's the thing. So that's where it's important that we bring in professionals to do this. Independent consulting firms that aren't residents, that can answer the questions. you know, these guys have set up a website that we're trying to gather a lot of that information to make sure it's all in one place, but I think the most critical part is to get a professional in.
Yeah, get the DCR report out there so people can see, they're the ones that have the final say. And get the DCR parameters out so people can read it and avoid all the name calling and fights that happened before and are happening, you know,
Can you
starting
get
now.
that?
Yeah, I'm not sure which ones she's talking about. Well, I'm sure we can find it. We'll find
Okay.
what she's
Yeah,
talking about.
And
It's
then
either that or I'm going to read my little thing I read at the beginning of the meeting again. I'm going to read it again.
Can't read it at the general store and then.
Or I'll quote my grandmother, what Thumper says, "You don't have something nice to say."
And I think we need to, what's important is that we need to find a location somewhere on the website that we can put all this information so people aren't searching around, even though it's very easy to type in stuff and
You mean on
find
the
it.
town website?
Yeah, the town
Okay.
website.
Can we
maybe-
just link to the Friends of page where they're gonna compile all that, or?
I don't know, but I just want,
It'll be up to you.
It is, that,
yeah.
yeah.
I'd worry just because they're an outside of
Okay.
town
Yep,
they're
governments,
not a
but the-
government.
right, they're not a
Okay.
government
Yep.
agency, but we could at least try to coordinate that the stuff, that
Okay.
they don't have like version 1 and we have version 1.3 on our
Okay.
website, and I'm
we
sure,
have access
I'm
to
sure
it.
that
And
group
the-
also
We
wants to
can
make sure.
mention
that-
it in the, like, you can put a link to it,
Right.
you know, and you can, we just put a disclaimer on it that it's not our website. I mean,
The-
you can do that.
Right,
That's
because
an
the town
outside
doesn't
agency.
control
Right.
the information that's on there.
Exactly,
Right.
and that's just a
Yep.
disclaimer we have to do in case somebody, God forbid, puts something up there that is offensive or whatever, you know, that
Yep,
we just
or
have to.
factually incorrect.
Sure.
Right.
Yep, yep.
The state.
Okay, who's talking
The
here?
rail trail report that was done is on the select board's website
Yes, it
now.
is.
Just wanted to say that out loud.
Right, and if you go
Yes,
into the
and it's
search
right
menu
there on
and
the
just do
front
rail
page.
trail, it's there,
Yep.
yeah.
And could you please share who's coming for the audience, the at-home audience? Who's coming to your meeting on the 17th?
Yeah.
So, hold on, before you do that. I
Sounds like
got
there's
a
an
phone
update.
call on my way home from work tonight. Will that room be ready for hybrid
Yes,
on the 17th?
you need to send an email to cableaccess@townofberlin.com.
My understanding is that several have been sent.
Oh, let
Okay.
me reach out.
Thank you.
You got it.
That would be great.
17th?
Because
218?
that's Wednesday, yes.
No, Rome.
No, room,
Oh, room.
so you'd have to
Sure,
shift.
yeah, our room.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
There's
the
two
big-
hybrid rooms,
sure.
so I just want to make sure.
Right,
it's-
which one do you want us to be in?
I don't care. You usually
Okay,
meet in
we
218.
usually, okay,
Yeah, but
yeah.
you're, but you're expecting a larger than normal audience. Shouldn't she be in the hearing room
The
at the
larger
end?
room?
The larger room?
We have to
Fine
see
with
if
me.
it's booked.
Whichever,
Yeah.
whichever makes the most sense.
You can try
We
it
are
out. It's
Flexible.
the 17th. We'll be in there on the 18th.
Right, right.
Okay.
Because my understanding is that, so Craig Della Penna is who Robin was gonna say, very much wants it to be a hybrid meeting. And even though he will be in the room, there are people that he would like to invite that can only attend via Zoom.
And-
We are having a hybrid meeting the following evening, so I don't believe that would be an issue.
Okay.
But let me just
Yep,
help with
that would be
connecting.
fabulous if we can get that confirmed.
You got it.
Because if we can get that confirmed, then we are definitely having that. And will we try to get someone from MassDOT?
So I don't think that that necessarily makes sense to have them come, based on conversations I've had with them. So I think we're gonna keep it to Craig Della Penna, who's kind of like the rail trail guru, and even the state defers to him. You know, they always say, reach out to Craig Della Penna, whatnot. So we are gonna try and get our peers in Hudson and Clinton to come, so that, you know, they can give updates on their sections of the trail, what's going on in their towns, the work that they're doing, and if they're not, so I actually am not available, I have to travel for work that week, so unfortunately I won't be there myself, but I did get updates from them, and I know Franny Hodge from Clinton was gonna try and come, and I've gotta see if Tom Green from Hudson is gonna be able to come too, but we're hoping to get updates from them, so.
So that's on the 17th.
Yep.
Yes.
So
At what
Wednesday
time?
is-
7 p.m.?
Uh,
Or is it after?
It'll like 7 or 7:15. I'm not sure that the time has totally been hammered out, but
Okay.
our meetings start at 7 o'clock. We may have a little housekeeping stuff, but other than that,
And you'll have some kind of a Zoom link posted somewhere?
correct. It will be posted on my town.
Conservation?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, so we'll need a Zoom link as a
Yes.
to D.
So beyond Craig's
Okay.
title of guru, what qualifications does he have where people are saying,
Oh, so he's been on this for 30 years or so? I mean, Walter's been working on this for decades too. You've known Craig from day one, right?
Yeah, he's probably the key
Hold on, he
factor
has
in
an
rail
actual
trails
okay,
throughout Massachusetts and around. He knows what's going on, the contacts, the recognized authority on virtually every aspect of it.
Yeah, he runs the website for the Mass Central Rail Trail, and he hosts all
We're
sorts of
lucky to have
events.
him.
Right.
Yeah.
But when I actually talked to him by phone, he knew people I worked with at a central Minneapolis rail trail project in the 90s.
Oh my
And
God.
he
Yeah.
knew them, and they're like, oh yeah, Craig, yeah, I was wondering who he's still up to these days.
I
So.
think he
Well, it
used
sounds
to
like
work
he
for-
gets guru as a
Yeah,
title.
he gets guru as
Yeah.
a title in a lot of different circles.
I
It's-
think he used to work for Rails to Trails Conservancy,
Yep.
if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken, which is like a national lobbying organization, I think it is, but I'm pretty sure he worked for them. So he's been doing this for
Yep.
decades, and
So Craig Della Penna is the executive director with the Norwottuck Network.
yeah, so that's a section of the Mass Central Trail that was probably one of the earliest to be developed. So that section out there in like the East Hampton area was developed back in the 90s. And so actually Craig is hosting a meeting on the 19th, I think, to talk about expanding the Friends group for that and the 501(c) to the whole Mass Central Rail Trail, to kind of like make people realize this is a statewide project, not a local town project. So, you know, there seems to be momentum at the state level now, finally, with funding and whatnot. They're using the TIP and STIP funds and to pay for construction. And so with that, there's more funding available. And,
Right, Governor Baker really set that in
Yeah.
motion. That was a big thing
Mass Trails
that was
grant.
important to him.
Yeah.
And maintenance. I read the article
Yeah.
that you sent. It actually included $3
$3
million
million
for maintenance
to
of the rail
DCR.
trail, which
Yeah.
is huge
Yeah.
because, again, being fiscally responsible,
Yeah.
the
Sure.
maintenance is an important piece to
Yeah.
consider, right? Because we just talked about budgets and funding and limited funds, and we
Yep.
have to pick and
Yep.
choose what we do. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, I still think, you know, to that point, they could cut funding at any time. So there's never a guarantee. I mean, we just
This
heard that
sounds
with
like
earmarks.
something we heard at
Fair,
about
but-
OPEB, doesn't
Right,
it?
exactly.
Didn't we
You
just
know,
hear this?
It's, yeah.
yeah,
So,
there's
Yeah.
a risk.
yeah, so there's a risk, of course, but, you know, right now there's momentum, there's funding, there's support for it. You know, the Healy administration is supporting it as well, so, you know, there's definitely momentum now.
Okay, so, going back, there was a
Right.
motion on the
Yep.
table and a second. Anything else the board wants to say? No? Yeah?
Out loud.
To us.
On camera.
on
All
camera?
right. Okay, then, if nothing else, then we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Very
Excellent.
good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
much
you.
appreciated. Cross your
Yeah.
You
fingers.
brought
Yeah.
your map. You didn't even get
I
to
know,
show
I
your
didn't even
map,
get to-
you
We
know?
can show it to
I
you.
got everyone
That-
excited about seeing a map too. That's
Well,
Do you want to see my
No.
map?
No, I mean, I appreciate,
The map is just the towns.
I appreciate you doing the,
It
you know,
does show
answering the
the
questions just to stop the,
Yeah. That's the thing, we need to stop the residents going back and forth.
Yeah.
That is
Having,
correct.
like, some real professionals answering questions.
correct.
Doesn't show the easement.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Oh, you're talking about
The rail.
oh,
I think we need to leave the room.
yes.
Yeah.
See, that's what I
Continue
mean.
your, we know all about this.
Thank
We'll
you,
just talk
everybody.
over you.
Yeah.
All right. So we're
Thank
back
you, guys.
to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Carolyn.
Yes, I know we did the town administrator report.
But
Are you going to save your
Take it.
questions?
I will save my questions until the end.
Okay, then we'll do old business, which is discussing the agenda for coffee talk.
I would like to suggest that we actually remove the rail trail from the Coffee Talk agenda. The Conservation Commission the night before is going to have a expert in and a hybrid meeting that they're going to invite people to, and I did think we would just do a poor summarization of the meeting as it happens, and encourage people who are interested in the rail trail to actually go to that meeting.
Go to the meeting either,
Right,
In
either
person
in person or hybrid,
or
especially since it's a hybrid
hybrid.
meeting. People can attend it from home or in person. I think
I
it
was
is.
going to suggest the same
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Fine with you, Peg?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Don't make people come
Fine
out
with
2
me.
nights in a row for something.
Right, they
I
would've
don't want to
already
say
heard-
it's watered
it-
down, but we're not going to have the experts there.
Right, and it's gonna just be duplicative at best.
Sure.
So,
Okay. Then we'll stick with the budget, the electronic voting machine, should we call it that?
Yes.
And do we need to discuss ARPA any longer?
That was brought up, but
I think it's really letting people know what we've getted our ARPA to and what we've done.
Okay.
You hear news stories all the time what other towns have done with their ARPA funds. I think I'm proud of some of the stuff we've done with
Yeah.
ARPA and even some of the stuff we
I
have
think if it's us
planned. I think
giving
it's
the
good.
information on the budget, the electronic voting, and the ARPA, and then questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is that,
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to see on the ARPA, I think we asked about it, maybe I just can't find it, is that on one of the spreadsheet, it has the projects and the money we thought, and then the money that was actually spent. Is there a column that has the difference? Because I know that we're talking about, oh, well, we'll use some of that ARPA money, we'll use some of that ARPA money. So Project A was $20, we spent $10, we've got $10 left over. Out of that $10, $3 is going for this, $6 is going for that, and $1 is going for that, if that equals 10.
so you want appropriated, expended, and leftover.
Right, and it's that leftover money, you know, what are we potentially looking at for leftover money? So as some of these topics come up, like the voting machine, we can say to folks, no, 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 don't worry, we have the $20. I'm not going to come, well, I wish it was $20.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to come back and say, oh, by the way, now fork over $20 for taxes, you know,
Right.
and as other items, you know, the assessment on the buildings, that's, you know, so just to say, we were given, we
That's
have
fine,
spent,
yeah.
we have left over.
that's actually, very common.
I like that.
Those
Yep.
those columns.
And I'll do that. The one caveat I'll put on it is that a lot of the projects are in progress, so it may not be real available
And that's
money.
fine, but I'm talking about like the tennis courts.
Right.
They're done. We
Correct.
said it was gonna be 150,000, it was
140.
whatever, 140. We have 10,000 left over. The fence at the garden was 45,000, whatever it was, with all the fixes and breaks and new blah, blah, blah. We have left over. Just so that people have an idea is that there might be a teeny tiny pot of money to allow us to do
Yeah.
other things.
And I think if we piece it from a couple different
Correct.
things like that,
Right.
I mean, we're looking at less than $10,000 because otherwise we'd have to do
Yeah.
the
Correct.
30B procurement quote,
Yeah.
the whole thing, so.
Okay.
I will not be there. I am out of town.
No worries. We got it.
I thought I did good at taking my vacation on a week there wasn't a select board meeting, and this wasn't on my calendar when I committed to.
Are you gonna be in Boston too?
No, no, no,
Oh,
no.
okay. Hopefully somewhere even better.
I'm gonna be in the Southern Caribbean, so, you know.
Do you wanna switch?
Aw, man.
Yeah. They did the
Always wanted
Maya
to go
meeting
there.
down here.
Do we have a time for this meeting?
6:30.
And how are we going to be distributing it? Getting the word out so that we get a lot of people there?
Now that we have the agenda, tomorrow, my goal is to work with Dee, make up some flyers and get it out on Facebook, social media, website, and post around some flyers.
And Brittany's going to be there to manage this.
Yes.
Whole
so
hybrid meeting.
The one thing she may need a laptop. Can you bring your laptop?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but she'll set it all up and hook it up and yeah. So the only other thing is you're going to have to be in one of the hybrid meeting rooms. So,
Okay.
oh no, and we have laptops in the hybrid meeting
Yeah.
rooms. Never mind, you don't need to bring a laptop. So the other thing I need to do though is reserve the room and put that on the flyer, obviously. So it'll either be 218 or 227, whichever one is available.
And are we providing snacks?
hope so.
Like,
Thank you, Roger, for volunteering to provide snacks.
What did you say?
I hope so. I mean, we always did like a
A
pot
coffee
of
and something
Joe or
small.
something minor like that. I mean, it is
Need to
coffee
do we
talk.
need to call Willie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Willie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously any other items that are brought up by the public, because that's the whole point behind Coffee Talk is a free discussion.
Right. And then questions.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll add that to it.
Okay.
That sounds good.
All right. New business. discuss the sale of 9 Village Lane.
Okay, so this was really simple and it got a little more complicated, but I'm gonna try to give a really quick, simple explanation on this. So there is a sale of an affordable unit. The Housing Trust has voted and the Board of Selectmen has a right of first refusal on it, meaning we can buy it if we'd like. The goal is we want to preserve the affordability of the unit. The town has an affordability restriction on it, which is why we have the right of first refusal to purchase. The Housing Trust has recommended the Select Board not exercise their right of first refusal at this time. Housing Trust is not set up yet with funding to do this type of work. They're looking also at other types of affordable funding options. We're not there yet. We are, and I'm going to keep this relatively general, the town did receive a summons today because the condo association is seeking back owed fees for that property. And the town is named because we have a lien, because we have an affordability restriction. And the association is seeking to be able to sell that unit themselves in order to recoup those outstanding fees. There is a slight chance, it's small, but there is a chance when it goes into court that it could lose the affordability restriction. The only way to 100% guarantee that it doesn't lose it is for us to buy it. Town council recommends against that, and I agree after hearing everything out. Funding don't have the funding, haven't done the background research, and from what I understand, the community is very interested in maintaining affordability of the unit. And also in the deed rider, it does state that anything that goes through a foreclosure process keeps the affordability restriction in it. This is very similar to a foreclosure process, but because it's not a bank foreclosure, it's a condo association taking over a unit, it's slightly different, and that's where your loophole could potentially come in court. However, given all of that, and I did speak with the chair of the Housing Trust today, I would recommend that the board do not exercise its right of first refusal and allow this to proceed. The other option that may happen is that if you pass on buying it, it will go out for sale at an affordable price for an affordable a family or individual. And it's possible that that could get sold prior to everything getting settled in court, and those outstanding balances could be paid off as part of the sale. So that's my recommendation to you.
Is there really a reason it has to be done tonight? I know it was brought to the Housing Trust because just because it was out there, but is
they're trying to put it on the market to sell it, and it does need to be sold. The owners are trying to sell it for personal reasons I don't want to get into, but we do need to get the state an answer.
In other words, that we have to waive our right of first refusal before they're even allowed to market it?
Correct. So it is set, they do set a price for it, and the price, it's either $227 or $229.
$229 maybe?
Right around there. It's just under $230. So at that price, the DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, doesn't think there'll be any issues selling it.
I was getting ready to declare a conflict, except that I no longer live there. I live across the street. I don't actually have a conflict anymore. That said, I am aware of the community. I believe it is worthy of trusting that they are trying to keep it as an affordable unit if they can, and I am fine and will make the motion to waive our right of first refusal.
I'll second it.
Okay, anything else? Hearing nothing, then we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And thank you for keeping the conversation general. Obviously, this is about people, so I didn't want to get specific, so thank you.
All right, where are we here? Vote to open the May annual town meeting warrant.
Believe it or not, it is that time. May town meeting is set for May 6th at Berlin Memorial School. And I believe we start at 7 o'clock, or is it 7?
Well,
I think it's 7:30.
Shoot.
We usually do a special meeting before the town meeting that takes care of a couple things so that we can have a warrant open later on. We've actually managed to avoid it the last couple of years, I think.
Right.
So hopefully we can do it at 7 and not have a special meeting before the town meeting.
Perfect.
Well,
but this just we don't have to set the time of the town meeting.
No, you're saying the start time of town meeting is 7:30.
Correct, I was
though.
just trying to make an
7:30.
announcement so
Yeah.
that people are already getting May on their radar, because we just got a giant snowstorm yesterday, and nobody wants to think about snow. So May is coming, closer than you think. So yes, May 6th, 7:30, town meeting, Berlin Memorial.
May
And
6th.
tonight, what I'm
Wow.
just asking the board to do, because that is set by bylaw, so you do
Yep.
not have to set that. I'm asking you to open the town meeting warrant with an anticipated close date of February 12th. And if you do that, we will send a memo out to all boards, committees, and departments, giving them the deadline for submittal of articles.
I'll vote to open the annual town meeting warrant with an anticipated close date of February 12th.
I will second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the board questions on agendas and liaison updates.
I just, if I could,
Mhm.
I have
Yes.
one quick one. I'm hearing around town all kinds of comments about this facility study from people who have seen it firsthand. Is there any point the board gets to see that, at least a draft version of that? So when people ask comments about it, I can at least say I've seen it or know when I'm going to have access to it?
Certainly, the goal was the board did allow and appoint a facilities
Yep.
study group
Yep.
to take a first look at the draft, because
Yep.
there may be errors.
Mhm.
There's one glaring
Mhm.
error on the cover
Mhm.
that we're fixing. So I did not want to send it out yet. Unfortunately, just has that error that needs to be corrected.
Mhm.
But I can certainly send it to the board. I just didn't want it
Mhm.
broadly
Mhm.
disseminated at this point. But we will certainly be having public meetings, presentations. This is the
Right.
very beginning, but I can
Right,
certainly
and-
send you out a copy.
And the comments I've heard from are from people whose input on it are important to get, like,
Planning.
a committee that's in charge of particular building, getting that section, a committee in
Yes.
part of different facet of that, getting that section, capital planning and others, and so it is good.
Yeah, my question is, because I'm sitting on FinCom and capital planning, if both of those committees can get it, because that has an
Definitely.
impact on how we're making our decisions.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to go far and wide. Right now, this is literally can we just make sure there's no glaring, awful errors in this before we put it out to the public that look like goofs? So that's really kind of where we're at, and then we will be disseminating it out.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I know we did not get the budget that we had hoped for from the school.
No.
Any idea when?
They're discussing it January 9th, which is tomorrow. Sorry, the days start to blend together.
I know.
And they wanted to discuss it at the school committee level before they sent it our way. One thing to note, I did have a conversation with Superintendent Costello. They're using a different budgeting format or process this year that was recommended by, it begins with an M.
Mars.
Mars, thank you. Which I always, not the planet. but
Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools.
Thank you. Good to have school committee knowledge over here. So this is a process that was recommended. I also asked if the superintendent could outline this process for the public and for the boards and committees, so there's understanding of why things are being done in this order, because in the past we've been presented with a level services and an above level services budget, and what came before FinCom as a preliminary budget back in December was an above level services budget. So that information should be forthcoming. Should have that in time for your January 22nd meeting.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to know is, it looked like March 22nd is when the school budget will be voted on by the school committee,
Okay.
according to your calendar that you
Oh, according to the
enclosed.
calendar, yeah.
Yes. Now,
That's the deadline for
Could
them
you-
to submit it to us.
do you know offhand, or could you look up what the bylaw is for Berlin for all budgets to be in?
That is the deadline. That's in the
March
regional,
22nd?
in the regional school districts, 45 days before town meeting.
But we have a bylaw. The town of Berlin has a bylaw.
Right, but this is in the regional district agreement, which would supersede. because this was done in 2019 between the town and the school, and it actually sets that 45-day clock.
Oh my gosh.
Which we were
It's
upset
just
with when that was in.
impossible.
Yeah.
It's just impossible for us as a town
To do any planning.
do a budget.
Yeah.
You know, when you don't know what the biggest budget is.
Well, they will be back before FinCom in February. I don't have the exact date. But
I
if
don't
you-
think there was I didn't have anything on my calendar for them, but
Yep,
if you
I
could
can
let
give
me
it to you.
know.
Yep, they will be, so Berlin-Boylston is coming February 7th to
Wait a minute,
FinCom.
wait a minute.
That is a Wednesday, February 7th. Meeting
Hmm.
starts at 7:30, and that is the only item on that meeting, because that will take some time. And then for anyone interested in the Assabet Valley budget, that is the following Wednesday, February 14th at 7:30.
And they're both probably 7:30?
7:30, yep.
Okay. All right. Does this board have any interest in going to a FinCom meeting? Maybe one of those dates?
I have it on my calendar to go every Wednesday.
Okay. Scott?
Uh,
If we were going
Right.
to go, even two of us, we'd have to post. That's why
Right.
I'm
I'm fine
asking.
with between PEG being a liaison and their meetings generally being public, and I can find them if necessary. I will leave it to the competent people of FinCom.
Okay.
One thing that would be helpful if anyone's looking for more night meetings to go to, I'm up to 3 a week now. So if anyone is interested in attending school committee meetings, that is something that would be helpful.
I have been trying to.
Great.
But then you said you were too.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a rather large one tomorrow, I think, that starts at 5, so I'll probably just put it on and walk around the house with the laptop.
Well, same here.
Mhm.
Because some of them you are able to watch them on Zoom, others are not.
Correct, yeah, no, this one is.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, there were just a couple points on there that I was just curious about how they were gonna talk about it, so.
And I believe, maybe not. I was going to say they were going to address our letter that we sent to them.
Correct.
But
I believe they're
is that
discussing
still
all
on
of
the
that
agenda?
tomorrow, including the Mars explanation and the level services budget.
Okay.
So I was going to try to listen in as well.
Is FinCom by any chance going to be in the hybrid room?
It's not set for the hybrid room?
No, we've been doing everything live right now in the 226.
But you may want to consider doing it hybrid, only because then you may have more audience.
It's not a bad idea. It's something we can
bring it
discuss.
up. We can talk about it on
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Okay. I'm looking at my scribbles to make sure. Oh, I did want to say that that was an excellent webinar email that Kristen sent us on de-escalating techniques, which I thought I might have to use tonight, but I didn't. And that's about it. All that I have.
All right, since we haven't met in 3 weeks.
I'm getting a whole new page ready for you.
You should. All right,
Is this some things that Scott and I should be privy to, or can we adjourn and you can?
Oh, no. Oh, no. We share the love here.
All right.
All right. So I just had a comment that, I'm how can they being the school committee, provide an above funding request and not be able to provide
That was my question.
a level service request? I would think
Yeah.
that they would start with something, and to be told when we specifically asked for it, no, you have to wait, when we know that it is in draft form. Once again, I feel like we are the tail being wagged by the dog with that.
So I don't want to answer for them, but my understanding is that this is part of this new process recommended by Mars, where you start here with what your needs are and you whittle it down. And that is what they're going to supposedly be explaining in the letter that they're sending
It's
our
just-
way. Which is how we used to do it, I think, here before town
Yeah.
administrator.
But it's saying you can give us the delta between your level services budget and your added services budget, but you can't tell us what the level services budget just doesn't make sense. I can tell you the delta, but not the number that delta is based on.
Oh, no, I think they have it. They just haven't reviewed it with the school committee. The administration hasn't reviewed it with the school committee yet, so they didn't want to send something that hadn't been reviewed with the school committee.
All right, we won't go there.
Right. Even with PEG math, it doesn't make sense.
That's right, even with PEG math, it doesn't make sense. You wait, that's gonna be the next thing coming, PEG math. Yeah, because I'm curious on their SRO meeting that they're going to have. Shrewsbury did this, and they had money put aside, and they did an audit, and they did interviews, and they reviewed documents, and they did assessments. So I'm curious as to whether Boylston or Tohoto or the whole committee, that they're going to be doing that, or is it just going to be a free-for-all with that? Because Shrewsbury, there was an article, again, I steal things from other papers, the Community Advocate had a very nice, well, if other towns are doing it, then maybe we should see how we can lean in as well. But they had put money aside to do this, so I'm going to be very curious as to where their quote-unquote facts are going to come from for a needed SRO with that. Do we, go
Can I
ahead.
make one quick comment on that?
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, I can tell you, we've provided input from me and Chief Shartner, that we do feel that our sort of informal arrangement with Goody, with Sergeant Goulding, is working quite well over at BMS, which the school does agree with. This is why they're looking at BES and Tohoto. The problem with those both being based in Boylston is that it would need to be a Boylston police officer, that funding would need to be, they would need to be part of the Boylston Police Force. I have concerns about funding in a year when we are looking, again, at so many different needs, and that was expressed back to the administration as well.
Well, I have concerns as well, because if it's an officer, brand-new officer, then he or she is going to the academy, so there's a time delay, and he or she will need a vehicle to buzz around. So it's very easy to say, we need an SRO, here's the price tag, for that. So be curious about that. Has there been any more movement on like joint meetings between us Select Board, Boylston Select Board, us FinCom, them FinCon, UTA, they UTA?
I thought we were going to
I did reach out. I think with the holidays, it might have gotten lost, so let me ping that again.
All right. And
whether it be just even select board.
Right, but I just didn't know. I mean, we all seem to be very much on the same page, and then it just kind of went
Right.
So, all right. And I don't know how D you spell so I can help you with that.
It's a technical term.
Technical term. Last time we met, you had rattled off that there were 5 missing budgets. Are they in? They were town clerk, elections, registration, town hall, unemployment. They're all in?
Yes.
Okay. It's been several months. Do we have an update on the website?
Yes. Unfortunately, the arrangement we had did not pan out. So I am looking to work with Civics Plus, who is actually the website host right now. They do website design. So I have reached out to them, and I'm in the process of getting a quote to have them do the upgrade. They are actually doing a free upgrade to, is it Drupal? There's some, the format that our website is currently in is antiquated, so they're actually going to be doing a free transition over to their newer version, and Scott probably speaks this far better than I do. But so they said they would need to do that migration first, and then we could look at doing this. I did this before. It was less than 10 grand to do. I think it was like $6 to do a full website overhaul. So I think that's actually a good path to go on.
Okay. Chris had mentioned it, the de-escalation webinar, and I looked up, and there used to be a policy hanging on the wall for how to conduct yourself, but there's no policy unless it's hanging behind the curtain.
It would be hanging right behind that if it was still
behind
there.
Behind the TV?
Behind the curtain. The screen.
The screen.
Oh.
So my question is, if it is there, does it need to be updated with the recent information on de-escalating and the fun that another town had where it got a little bit out of control? It was slightly amusing, but it got a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
Do we need to update that and/or any of the other pieces of paper that are hanging in the offices, hanging in the various rooms around this floor? Do we need to go down and rip them down and put them up? Because there's still stuff up there from Attorney General Maura Healey. Maura Healey is not our
You can
Attorney
check
General
the bulletin
anymore.
boards.
Mhm.
In terms of the visitor policy, that is fine. The new Supreme Court ruling pertains specifically to residents to speaking at select board meetings. So we do not have an official policy at this time. We have some guidelines in the board and committee volunteer handbook for how to handle public meetings and open what's it called, public comment period.
Yes,
but in
that's
no
what
way
we were looking for, I think.
do we
wasn't
restrict,
it?
oh, there's that?
Yeah, so,
oh, I thought you were talking about the visitor code of conduct.
No, there's,
No.
well, there's a visitor code of conduct, and there's also a communication, conduct there. Can somebody look under
I'll
there
look
and
it
see
up.
if there's anything?
It was about meetings, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it was about meetings, okay.
Behavior in a meeting or
How to
something.
conduct yourself during a meeting.
Well, I've probably broken the whole thing, so.
Is there anything under there?
Nope, it's gone.
All right, so there
Okay.
is something that's floating around
find it.
on a web, I couldn't find it, but I'm thinking it needs to be, if we have one, it should be updated, so once again, everyone's on the same page and we can all play.
You can start with
Nice,
my little piece of paper.
We'll frame that and put that on the wall.
I'm just gonna go back to
You have a
the
question,
number.
Kevin?
I don't think there's any Spanish on the wall that says for someone to pick up the police phone either down there. Give an update,
Oh,
you know.
Okay,
If they spoke only Spanish,
I
we
could be
personally at their
wrong,
end, no.
but
I don't think that there is.
I don't think that there is, might be a nice touch. So
No, there was,
another-
there was one night that I
or
was leaving.
Multiple languages.
Yeah, that I was leaving late here and the person walked in, didn't know what to do with the phone, walked back out and started banging on the window, like where Abby sits, and luckily there was an officer sitting in there who,
There often isn't, so that's.
correct. So that literally, he was
That's what it says under the phone.
bang on the window,
Right.
Scare Abby to death.
bang on the window, call Kevin.
We're sending them to your house, don't worry.
So last Friday, there was an issue with a school committee meeting that was on, that did not meet the guidelines for open meeting. Was it canceled?
No.
So basically, anything that was discussed and/or voted on is null and void in that meeting.
not unless they get a complaint.
Unless they make a
Correct, not
complaint.
unless someone files a complaint.
Wonder who's gonna do that?
Someone will now.
They, we advise that the meeting should be canceled, but
Oh, no,
outside
don't
of
check
that.
that
Right, 'cause we don't supervise
We-
the school board. The school
correct.
board's its own independent body.
Correct.
And so they're not adhering to state rules and laws, sadly, is their responsibility and not ours.
But shame on them.
And then the last one that I had, you had sent around, you being either you or you, I think it was UD, sent around a buy recycled memo,
Yes.
policy. I don't remember ever doing a buy recycled
Oh,
town policy.
we had to, Margaret brought it before
Did
us
we?
when we were applying for a state grant. It was required to have
Okay.
for some state contract. that we were
Every
assigned.
year,
And you have
DEP
to- yep.
requires us to do it when you're applying for a grant.
Okay, so.
I have to do it at work, too.
Not that I'm a fan of sticking things on the wall, but I mean, is there like a central repository where some of these notices can go up so that we can point and say it is there, or are we relying on each department head to be like, here you go, read this policy?
Well, that particular policy, I don't think impacts every employee, because you have to, it involves purchasing, so only those people who actually do purchasing.
Correct, so it was sent to all department
It was
heads and
sent to all
chairs of boards and
departments.
committees.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right, I just want to make sure that it's going to the right people and then it's up, because again, if it needs to be up, don't want to clutter the walls, but
Well,
I want to
from
make
now
sure
on,
it's
we
out there.
can just point to where the.
Point behind the
and say,
screen?
It's under there.
What
be
is it,
anything under there.
Schrodinger's policy, it's both behind the thing and not behind the thing?
On
Yeah.
recycled paper,
Recycled paper, yeah.
I don't know why that
written in
screen is
invisible
down.
ink.
I think that
Right.
screen doesn't go back up is why it's down. I
Right.
asked that question once.
Oh, that could be.
Don't we have a
And
maintenance person who can fix things?
The lease
Perhaps we
agreement
do.
you said was with the school. Do we have any idea when we're going to have that back?
They were talking about, I believe, tomorrow.
Yeah, after their meeting
So
tomorrow.
after their meeting, we should receive it back with comments.
Okay.
And that means that then it will be disseminated to us,
Correct?
and we will put it on an agenda
Correct.
in order to either edit it further or,
Yes, so I'm actually going to put a placeholder on 122, just in anticipation of hopefully having received that.
okay?
All right. Any other questions I will hold until later?
All right. Well, I have quite a few dates that I've written down over this course of this meeting now. But for now, we've got no executive sessions, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
So
would make a
moved.
motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 And